Hi, I'm Kelly Vaughn, and this is Inside Indy. And today we're going to be talking about, well, you know about the massacre in Florida. A former student there unleashed a hail of gunfire in Florida at a high school there, killing at least 17 adults and children on the campus. And joining us in the studio to talk about the various issues surrounding this horrific event are Rob Havermale, the Reverend Rob Havermale. You are with Life Church 180, youth pastor.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Kimball Richardson, you are a licensed mental health counselor for Community Health Network.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for coming back again. And then Stan Lovins II, you are an evangelist and founder of Sandlot Ministries, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to the show.
It's a joy to be here. Thank you.
Wow. I thought of you three to come on because I think people out there, they want answers. And I know the whole nation has been trying to find answers to the questions surrounding the shooting, whether it's Congress doing its thing or students who are out protesting. But I wanted to dig a little bit deeper in terms of, how does this all apply or impact us here in central Indiana? And the things that we need to be doing now that we've seen what's happened there. And it's not like the first time we've seen this, but for some reason it's sticking. And let's start with that question first. Why do you think this time the nation seems to be stopping as opposed to the other times? Because you've got the protests, you've got the lawmakers. For the first time, it's gone on longer than a couple of days, the conversation about it. What do you think, Rob? What's the difference this time, this particular shooting?
Well, I think over the last, the last year with the elections and all of that, everybody's been talking about they're coming to take our guns and all of that. And I think that with the students taking a stance this time and really saying we want something to be done has stood out for such a long time at this time to where it's now different as we have kids standing up than adults arguing back and forth. I think they're tired and they want something done.
Yeah, because in the end, it was about them and many of those who died. What about you, Kimball?
I agree totally with what Rob said. I think, the first time we had this in the United States, or one of the first in recent memory with Columbine, it's so shocking. It's hard to move. We're just kind of almost stilled by it. And then this particular time, it was more, we were called into action. And not that the other times weren't, but it was a national effort in this case. And so everybody, I think, is behind, we need to stop this and do something about it.
Okay, I agree. Pastor Stan, did you want to chime in on that?
Well, you look back to, Columbine, and then you had Sandy Hook, and you have many different major school shootings throughout the history, but, I believe that it's an awareness that this generation is rising up, and they have a voice to be heard, and it's a matter of helping them understand and us learning from them as well, and what they're really dealing with, and bringing things to the light. And so they want to get to the root, and I know we want to get to the root of this as well.
Did it make you kind of feel like, why didn't I think of this before? Or why didn't the students react? It was kind of, it's like, why didn't we do this back in Columbine? Did you have that reaction at all? Like wow, I could have had a V8 kind of moment.
I think Kimball said it best, that it was a shock. So that shocking moment of, is this really going on? That people really didn't know what to do at that time. I think it was more sadness and shock than it was anything else.
Okay. The security issue in terms of, I know there's been some discussion about teachers carrying guns in school. That's a big national debate, or how to protect children. And I know, Rob, you've been having meetings with various law enforcement agencies about protecting churches, because we've had church shootings as well as in schools. So do you see any solutions to this kind of problem, any suggestions of what we should be doing in schools and or churches in terms of protecting the congregation or the student population?
Well, at some of your bigger schools around the city, you have school police, and they have multiple school police who carry firearms. I'm not sure in Florida what their case is, but I know here in the city of Indianapolis, that's what we have. As far as teachers carrying guns, I would want to debate that a little bit more than before just said, yeah, I definitely want it or I definitely don't, because I would want to know where's the weapon at, and all of that stuff. Who do they know that they're shooting at compared to a police officer who is highly, highly trained to look at what's different as they're coming through? I believe that we need to look at that a little bit more before we just start saying, yeah, we're going to put firearms in schools, where a kid could just go at the gun instead of having to bring one in. He knows that there's guns. Because what people who are hell-bent on doing evil, they're watching you more than you're watching them. So that child who wants to do something, or that student that wants to do something, he's watching the teacher. He knows, when he goes and calls his wife or her husband. He knows when they step out. He knows all of these things, or she. Most of these have been guys. Unfortunately, that it happens. But they know, what you're doing. And all you have to do is make one little mistake of leaving it out somewhere, and that kid who wants to do this could.
So instead of Nicholas Cruz going out and buying a gun, he would have just say, hey, they're bringing it, I have easy access through an officer or a teacher who's standing there with the.
Correct. And is the teacher highly trained enough to shoot it? And would they be willing to do it in the moment? It's okay to say, man, yeah, I would protect my students in a second. But in that moment, not being a police officer, would they pull the trigger? And then the other thing is, what is the insurance liability on the school and all that other stuff?
Wow, a lot of things to think about. But I think in theory, I know a lot of people kind of poo-pooed the president on that issue. But when I heard him say it, I thought, you just think like, yeah, like that's what you ought to do. But then on second thought, you go, well, but if time I try to, like some of the things you're bringing up, on second thought, maybe it's not. But I didn't think it was a bad idea, but the afterthought.
It's an idea.
It's
an idea.
Right.
An idea.
It may not be the one that's
going to make it, right?
Sure.
But
It
that
starts
was
a
kind
dialogue.
of,
It starts a dialogue, right?
and that's what they were doing. They were kind of tossing ideas around, and the press kind of took and ran with it. But and not to say that I agree with a lot of things he says, but I'm a fair person. If you got something positive to say, I'm going to say, okay, that was a good point, whether I like you or not. So,
One of the things, Kelly, if you don't mind me saying, really appreciate our public safety professionals who can help us understand how to protect churches, students. From a mental health perspective, I think, and this is the tougher thing to put in to legislation, because we want to see results right now. And so when we go back and talk about how can we promote good mental health from little kids up to big kids, it's hard to see those immediate results when you're talking about, let's teach kids how not to bully other kids. Let's teach about love. Let's teach about mental illness. Let's get families in to have discussions, things like that. And those are things that really do have a long-lasting effect, but it's hard to see the results quickly.
okay.
I believe that we got to get down to the root and the core in this nation, period. What we have is a hate issue that manifests in, whether it be gunfire, whether it be race, whether it be whatever factor. It's about getting back to the heart. It's a heart issue. It's spiritual as well, because if these kids do not know that they're valued, I'm talking about the kids that are bullying and the kids that are being bullied, because most kids that are bullies usually have been bullied by somebody else.
Oftentimes, yeah.
Oftentimes. So it's a learned behavior many times, but it's also spiritual, because those things attract other things. And there's a demonic world. There's a dark world that's attacking at all times. But if we get to the root and help these kids know that there's value, that Jesus Christ gives them value, He helps them overcome, and He loves them, then they begin to have value for other people. If you're just important because you can do X, Y, or Z, then you're expendable. But if you have value, then you have the love and the appreciation to value others. And that's really a heart issue that we need to get back to. And that can be learned across political lines and different levels of understanding. But that's really the root of it.
Now let me ask you this, because this is going to open up a whole other can of worms, and I wasn't really anticipating on asking this question, Pastor Stan. But when we talk about it being a spiritual issue, what do we do about people with mental health issues? Because what it sounds like to me, what you're saying, there is a person who knows the difference between right and wrong, and he can make a decision between good and evil, and maybe his environment, it wasn't that child that was raised up in the way that he should go, so he should not depart from it when he gets older.
Right.
But is there a segment of our population where there are mental challenges and that's the question, is that a spiritual thing? Or, each of you might have a totally different definition, especially with Kimball, with the scientific definition of what that is. So let's start with that, and let's start with Rob and Stan on the spiritual side of that, because I think we felt in this case, when you look at a Charles Manson, I understand the dark side, but I also think there's some people, there's some people who don't have mental capabilities, but aren't necessarily evil. They just can't do certain things.
Right.
So we're talking about, and I know I'm
I think
stepping
it's
up
two
close to a
different-
line that you don't really want to cross.
I think it's two different elements. You have the spiritual side and the mental health, but they do combine. Where a lot of pastors get it wrong is they don't want to combine both of those. So, some kids do need medications, and some pastors are like, no, we can just pray for you, you'll be fine. And you get into an issue where you don't really want a kid who is severely mental health issue, not on his medications. And I think where America kind of gets it wrong, and you can chime in, Kimball, is when you look at mental health, everybody thinks like they're crazy. Mental health, there's a big, wide range on that line of anything from depression, all the way to manic depression, all the way to some psychosis. You can't really diagnose kids with that, but they have traits of that. So people think, oh man, they're just, they're psychotic. And where you look at the Florida issue, this kid, he just lost his mom in November. He was living with somebody else. He was bullied at school. We came to find that out. We came to find out that he had some mental health issues. And I do believe that if the school system failed, I do believe that students in that school who have faith, because we talk to our students about that all the time, and when we talk to schools, is there's people that are around you that need to know Jesus, and you're holding it all in. So, that's a big ball to kind of hit. But if we look at it in both aspects, that a lot of these students, they're not psychotic. They have some manic depressive or some things that are going on that that's how they go. I don't believe any of them have had traits of psychosis, have you?
Okay, we're going to take a break. Hold that thought,
Okay.
that question, and when we come back, we're going to answer it here on Inside Indy next. Welcome back to Inside Indy, and you're joining us with the Reverend Rob Havermail and Kimball Richardson and Evangelist Dan Lovins II, and we're talking about the shootings in Florida where 17 people lost their lives when a former student unleashed a hail of gunfire on the school grounds. And we were posing the question about whether these, or in this particular case, the Nicholas Cruz, was he mentally ill? Was it something demonic? And I wanted to hear from Kimball about, when you see cases like this happen, do you analyze, or do you have a feel of what's going on?
Yeah, without, of course, technically without doing the assessment yourself or reading the notes, it's difficult to say exactly, but yeah, with your training and experience and expertise, you have a sense of what might be happening.
So what is happening, do you think, and not just particularly Nicholas, but in a lot of these cases, what's going on? And because I guess we look to you as a professional mental counselor to identify what this is, and is there anything we can do to fix it?
Well, there's lots of things that we can do to fix it, but it generally somebody has a mental health issue at least, if not a diagnosis, and it really is difficult to tease that out. It's not just the scientific part. We try to think about things mind, body, and spirit. All those things are important. So whether somebody's physical health is not in alignment, they're not spiritually fulfilled or enlightened, if you will, or have some sort of sense of a higher power, whatever that means for them. But all that together, I think most people in the medical field would take a look at.
Okay. So in that particular case with the Nicholas boy, was he insane?
Well, insane, I mean, that's actually a legal term. It's not ironically, it's not a mental health term in that mental health professionals don't use that as a way to describe people.
Okay.
It's actually a
Just Kelly
technical
did that,
legal.
so.
Yeah, right. Just you. You're our attorney today, Kelly. But anytime somebody has a variant that disrupts their ability to have healthy relationships with people, or their ability to function in society, whether that's at school, whether that's at home, out in the world, usually when there's difficulties with those areas, that causes problems.
But what I'm frustrated with, and any of you can chime in at this point, what I'm frustrated is that when this issue of people not chiming in when they saw the signs.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that? What's going on in society when, because this guy was pretty blatant. I mean, there's some people that give subtle hints and you could, maybe that meant, no, he was out there, on social media talking about I got guns and all that. How did that happen? What's going on in the minds of the quote unquote sane people to not have reacted to that? And then there's this whole other issue of when somebody is mentally disturbed that you can't get in there to do anything about it because they haven't done anything yet. And when are we going to fix that? So have at it.
I really feel that the root of all that is fear. Fear of the consequences if you step in, and the lawsuits and all this propaganda that's coming against even the school system to, how dare you diagnose my son as this or that. I mean, even in the medical field, I mean, I've got friends, and Rob's one of my friends as well, who's dealt with the medical field. The consequences of stepping out, and you kind of feel vulnerable. These people feel vulnerable to step across their jobs, their livelihoods on the line. Now, with all that being said, I also believe wholeheartedly where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. Mm-hmm. And if you love your neighbor as yourself, you're going to step up and above. And as a member of the body of Christ, I love Jesus Christ with all my heart. And I want to bring healing to everyone that I see is in desperate need. So I'm willing to go there. We've gone into the streets of Indianapolis and been in the ghetto of Atlanta, being willing to put your life on the line for the better cause. And these kids, such as what happened down there in Parkland, there was telltale signs there. And I believe we need to do a better job of being consistent and intentional, there's a key word, to really help out these kids because they really want it. And they're desperate for help, but they just don't know where to go. And I grew up in a household where there was a lot of abuse myself. And I'm being transparent here. But it would have been easy without the right help. I could have went off to the left or right. Let's be real. Any one of us can fall away. Our own hearts will deceive us. So I believe this young man was crying out. All those were telltale signs that he was crying out for help. And I call for the body of Christ, the church, to rise up and engage. And that's where there has to be more liberty for us to work together in the communities and really help out with these special situations because they're all around us.
Can I give you a success story? Just you made me think about something, Stan, that just in the past couple of weeks, that happened right here in Indianapolis. And this is a really good way that we can form partnerships, because I know Rob works with police officers, and I have a lot of experience in that too. Mental health professionals having open dialogue with law enforcement, having a quick way to reach each other when there are concerns and issues. We had a police officer was sent some screenshots of somebody's Facebook page that were quite disturbing about they wanted to hurt themselves, they wanted to hurt other people. And of course, from law enforcement perspective, they're thinking about, you know, how to protect the person and the public, of course. But they also immediately contacted mental health professionals and said, this is happening. We're going to try to find them. If we can, we're going to try to bring them to a facility for an evaluation. And I know that person did get help, the appropriate medical and psychiatric help. So they were kept safe, the public was kept safe. But that happened just within hours of each other. So when those open dialogues and partnerships go on, there's some successes that can happen.
But see, in a case like that, the police were involved, but you have situations, we all know of somebody, it could be a family member, it could be
Well,
you know,
here's
a
Kelly.
friend, and you can't intervene because, first of all, they don't see it. They don't see they have an issue, and you can't, how do you get those people to see it or to get them, and I guess years ago before they, you know, before the governor with the mental institutions changing what was a central state and all that, people were admitted. Where do you go? Where you don't, and that's the thing about it is that the people who, to the rest of the world, it's very obvious there's a problem and they don't see it.
Well, let's keep in mind, Jesus talked very much about healing and deliverance. There is a medical side, but there's also a very spiritual side to this as well. Jesus came in to destroy the yoke of the enemy. The enemy wants to steal, kill, and destroy. So biblically, the roots of this is destruction. And many times these kids are crying out. They don't want to be destructive, but they live a destructive life because that hurt on the inside is worse than the pain on the outside. And so they get desensitized as well many times from the video games, the things that they've experienced. So we've got to get back to the heart of this.
Okay, and we're going to have to close on that word of wisdom from Pastor Stan because we're out of time. I'm so sorry. We could have got. I could do like 2 more shows on this, right?
Right.
So will you come back? We'll have to do like a part 2.
Most definitely.
We'll invite some other folks that we need to bring into the
definitely.
mix. We'll do that. Okay, very good. Reverend Rob Havermail, Kimball Richardson, and Stan Levins II. Thanks so much for joining us
Thank you.
on Inside Indy, and thank you out there for joining us. I'm Kelly Vaughn. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.